All right, welcome back to our Board of County Commission meeting. Our last agenda item, 2024 Legislative Session Final Report by Ms. Sarah Powers and Matt Forrest. Take it away.
It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon now, officially. For the record, Matt Forrest with Ballard Partners representing Martin County. It's a pleasure to be here with you. As I said, it's nice that I live in West Palm Beach, so it's easy for me to zip up here, and I hopefully will not stand between you guys and your early afternoon as well. Before we begin, I always like to remind everybody, because I know my name gets tossed around a lot. I talk with your staff often, but I just want you to remember you have a full firm that represents you. Ballard Partners is a statewide government affairs firm, headquartered in Tallahassee, Florida, but with offices around the state, including West Palm Beach, Florida. We also have now a large practice in D.C. And continue to expand. Martin County, especially, is one of our oldest clients. You guys are a legacy client, probably. If I had to look back, arguably, maybe one of our even first local governments. And so we're proud of the reputation and the trust you've put in us. And we love working with all of you. But I always want to remind you that you have more than just Matt. When I go up to Tallahassee, we're constantly talking about all of your needs, including Brian Ballard himself, updating him on exactly what's important to the county. So I think it's important to stress that you have a full firm and not just me. I'd also like to stress that I'm not out there alone. I'm not a guy that you just send.
Don't just call him. He's really saying.
No. I'm saying I always just want to remind everybody, because a lot of times you go, well, maybe we need more people, and I am your main guy, your main contact, and it's also very convenient because I live just down the road. But I'm in Tallahassee, obviously, throughout the session, as you guys see when you come up there. But the full firm is always working with you, and we also take great pride, especially as the firm has grown, to be very collaborative. We're not a firm that kind of gets siloed and say, oh, you're just on Matt's plate. We're very much hey, who's great with this person over here, and I need help getting in there and getting this thing done. So just want to make sure you know that. Also, always want to stress, I'm not up there alone. Your staff, I talk with quite often, from the county administrator to Sarah and also to John. A lot of dialogue goes on between me and the entire the staff, whether it's back and forth or also with Sarah up in the hallways there. So you're very well represented in Tallahassee, is my point. The session concluded on March 8, which now seems like forever ago. We call that the early session. So it won't always be. Obviously, it alternates every other year, but it concluded on March 8. And things will probably stay pretty quiet in Tallahassee now. They're not anticipating any special sessions as of right now. Now, there is obviously always rumors and buzz. I can tell you there was a strong rumor for about 2 weeks there that they're going to go back up and do some other special nuanced things in a special session. But that's all kind of been quelled and gone away. It's still possible something might happen between now and the election in November, but if they do, it'll be very limited. So with that said, I give you that big picture to say things will stay quiet in Tallahassee legislatively, which is not to say that there still can't be a lot of activity at the agency level, but most people are back in the districts now in campaign mode. So this is a great time to dive into exactly what happened, some things that changed, some things that didn't pass, and also start kind of slowly ramping up to what legislative issues you might have going into the 2025 session. Normally, when I give this presentation, there's a list of agenda items behind me, and I always say this is a horrible setting for a deep dive into legislation. Even though I am the last thing, maybe this is still a great reason to say this is still a horrible time, a horrible setting for a deep dive into legislation. There's a lot of nuance on what a bill is and does not do. It's always important to read the actual words on the page and what does it do. It's also great to make sure your county attorney is up to speed on exactly what it may do, and also how it may impact the existing words on your ordinances and how they impact. So this is a great setting for a quick recap and maybe some highlights, but I always say dive into the actual end of session report. Feel free to read that at the beach when you have plenty of time, and then we can come back in personal one-on-one time or with your county staff and really dive into exactly what might be an impact. With that said, let me dive into some highlights. Let's start with the appropriations world. This year, the legislature passed a $117.46 billion budget. So that will be the budget, the General Appropriations Act, going into the July 1, 2024 to June 30th, 2025 fiscal year. Now, that number will probably decrease yet again. The governor has not been sent the budget yet, and therefore has not issued his line item vetoes yet. So, but before we even get to the veto list, it's important to know that the $117.46 billion is less than the budget they passed the previous year. So all reports are roughly the last budget was about $2 billion more. So you're already going into a budget that had less projects, less issues, less money as they tried to reel in some of the spending up in Tallahassee. The governor has already said that he'd like to get that budget below $117 billion. So just to do the math for you, that's already about a $460 million cut that the governor will probably be looking through on the veto list. Last year, the veto list was $510 million. So I give you that big picture to make you realize the veto list is probably going to be substantial. It always is, and especially when it comes to local governments. There's a bulk of the projects, the bulk of the line items are usually local government generated, and so they're always going to bear the brunt of a heavy veto list. Also, I think it's always great for those of you that aren't big sports fans. I am, and I always think stats are important. Even though I'm not an analytics guy, I do think it's important to always get big picture. Otherwise, you get very focused on just what you're immediately concerned about. This year, there was 2,772 budget requests from members up in Tallahassee seeking $7.46 billion. I give you that number because it as a lobbyist that's now done this for probably 16 years, every year it gets bigger. Every year members get more and more ideas of ways to draw down dollars to the local districts, which I think is great. I think it's great that there's a heavy dialogue with that. At the same time, I also feel like there's going to be a market correction eventually. Eventually, somebody's going to say, God, we're seeing more and more requests every single year. In the final budget this year, of that 2,772 projects, 1,547 are member projects in the budget. So a lot of projects in there, but if you look at the big picture, even out of 2,700 that were filed, only 1,500 made it. So it's still a very competitive argument. I always joke you're pushing a heavy rock up a hill. Some rocks are lighter than others, but it's really hard to get stuff in the budget. But I'm proud to say, with the staff's help, we filed 6 projects for Martin County specific in the budget, or to be considered. And out of those 6, 4 of them made it through the process and are in the budget. So we right now have current line items for the Martin County Bessie Creek retrofit, $500,000. County Road 710 realignment, $3.5 million. The Martin County Sheriff's Office Mental Health Housing Pod, which we assisted the Sheriff's Office in pushing for $500,000. And of course, the Martin County Gomez Community Petway potable water service for $940,000. So those projects are all 4 line items in the budget that we are advocating to the governor's office that they stay in there. I can tell you I'm advocating for all of them. I'm also going to warn you and just give you, again, like I said, it's going to be a heavy veto list coming out. I was thinking, again, from a sports standpoint, we filed 6, we got 4. That's a great day. You're in the All-Star game. But we're not going to go 4 for 4 probably in the final days. I have a feeling, hopefully we maintain the large ones. We're hoping we maintain as many as we can. But it's going to be really hard to maintain 4 projects when the veto list comes out. Also of note in the budget, I think it's important to note the final proviso language in regards to Everglades restoration. When the initial budgets came out, the Senate does their budget, the House does their budget. The Senate budget included proviso language that was very specific and as we learned, restrictive on eligible projects in the comprehensive Everglades restoration project silo. Many agencies saw that restrictive and very specific list and pointed out why this would be problematic. I think Martin County is to be commended in addition to numerous other agencies, but your staff and many of your commissioners came up to Tallahassee to immediately kind of raise why this would be problematic and how it could impact Martin County. And I'm happy to say that in the final negotiations, the Senate moved away from their position, and the final language in the House is the language that Martin County advocated for and pushed. And so, again, not a member project, but was definitely a red alert, all hands on deck, and I'm happy to say in the end it all worked out. Moving on to some legislation of note. Now, again, this is the occasion, too, where we could be here all day talking about bills that did or didn't pass and exactly what happened with them. So I'm just going to give you, again, some big picture numbers so you can always get a good idea of perspective, and then 2, some bills of note that I think are important to highlight and kind of keep in mind. For starters, 1,957 bills filed. So the Schoolhouse Rock video that everybody remembers, there's a lot of those little bills. And what they don't tell you is the life expectancy of most of them are not good. A lot of those bills don't make it out of committee or even get heard in committee. In the end, 325 of those 1,900 bills passed both chambers. So a legislature, even though numerous get filed, it's always important to remember very few are going to make it through the end of the day. Out of those 325, I think it's always a note, too, that even as we sit here now in June, several, God, what are we in 3 months after the legislature has concluded, 67 are still waiting on action. So 67 of them have not been sent to the governor yet for his approval or veto. So that's 21%. So there's still a lot to be determined from the legislative session is kind of my point. There's still a couple controversial bills that people are echoing and hoping for a veto. One thing of note, though, I also wanted to note, I'm not sure it will be an issue in Martin County, but because it was slipped in a non-traditional place, I think it's important to note, in the budget actually, in the implementing bill, Senator Brodeur included language that prohibits a county or municipal government from banning the operation of leaf blowers for at least 1 year. This is a controversial issue that's popping up in other areas of the state. Certain local governments are banning gas-powered leaf blowers, and Senator Brodeur, along with others, basically said, look, we're going to take a moratorium on this. No actions for a year. There's going to be a study on it. But because that's not a bill, it was never debated. It was never, you probably were never alerted on it. It was never something somebody could stand up at a committee and say whether they like or not. It literally was done in the budget negotiation process. I think it's important for most local governments to note that. And I don't think you guys have a pending leaf blower ban, but in case it comes up, there you go. See, there you go. Well, at least you can wait for a year. Other bills of note that passed. Again, I think a highlight for Martin County, because I guess it's an issue I didn't know about until you put it on my radar going into the session, is Senate Bill 7040 and the ratification of the DEP stormwater rules. Again, a topic that was near and dear to your staff's heart. These rules have been in place in development for the last 3 years. Most consider it the last piece in implementing the 2020 Clean Waterways Act. That ratification happened. So the bill passed, I think, unanimously both sides. It has not been sent to the governor yet, but most anticipate approval when it is done.
The 67?
That is one of the 67, still waiting. Yep.
Who determines whether they go or they don't go?
Well, all bills will go eventually. When they are sent or how they are sent is kind of done informally. Most know that there's obviously a ticking clock once a bill is sent. The governor has, I want to say, 14 days to either act or not act. That date changes if it's done during session. Most don't realize there's no time frame on when a bill must be sent. Usually, theoretically, it's before the effective date. So, for example, the budget, it needs to be in place July 1. So most theoretically would say it needs to get sent before July 1. And that's, most bills are the same way. So, but I also would not read anything into the has it been sent or not been sent. A lot can be just done on maybe just, we want to have a great press conference on this, and it's not in the schedule yet. I can't be where I want to be yet.
I just don't know if I've ever heard that there was a holdback or there was a delay of all bills being sent. I mean, I assume they all went.
No.
At some point they got vetoed or they didn't.
No, they're definitely not all. So this is very normal. Again, as a guy that's done this for years, they definitely don't send all the bills at one time. Again, even though it's a smaller number, that'd be 325 bills that all have a ticking clock now. So he's got 14 days. It'd be like, plate spinning. Some they want to do press conferences on when they sign them. Some members want them to sign them in the district. The governor couldn't possibly get to 325 places, all at one time. So there's just a pacing of that for reasons. And a lot of it also is just maybe I can tell you in some that are controversial, they want more time to hear from all interested parties. They want more time to really kind of weigh the merits of a case.
Do any of them ever not make it, or they all have to go?
All bills must eventually be sent, yes, for consideration. Yep. A couple other bills of note that did pass. HB 267, residential building permits. This is something your staff is going to want to make sure they take note of. This speeds up the review time for numerous applications. I want to stress on this, it speeds up the review time. It does not speed up the approval time. Many local governments show a little heartburn on this, and we have X amount of days in order to get these approved. That's not what they're saying. It's X amount of days in order to speed up the review time. So you don't need to approve all these permits right away, but you need to at least respond back to the applicant and whether they are sufficient or deficient and go on from there. But the dates and numbers did change significantly in numerous categories. Another great example of dive into the bill because there's a lot of categories. Another one is affordable housing. You might remember 2 sessions ago, the Live Local Act was passed. This does a lot to incentivize projects that are considered affordable housing projects, as long as they meet specific definitions. They went back and further enhanced that program to make it more specific on exactly what those enhancements could be and exactly what those restrictions would be. Again, your staff will want to make sure they take of note of what those changes are. Also, lastly, it passed, but we'll see what happens. Vacation rentals. This bill has been around for many, many sessions and has not passed. This year, it did. A version of vacation rentals passed. It's SB 280. It has not been sent to the governor yet. It remains controversial. Many local governments oppose it. Many local governments support it. Many vacation rental platforms oppose it. Many vacation rental managers support it. And I know, as other clients of mine, hoteliers do support it. From a local government standpoint, I would tell you it gives you more tools in your toolbox, or at least in terms of it specifies exactly what you can and can't do on certain conditions. It does preempt to the state the regulation of vacation rentals with away from these abilities. But for example, one issue I've seen in this area for years was the issue of occupancy. And before, even though it was not specified, it was always unclear whether a local government could set an occupancy limit on a house. This bill does give that specifics now and say exactly what the occupancy limits could be. I believe it's 2 per room, and then there's a certain discretion for a second ancillary room. Let's say you have a large garage that's air conditioned or undercover or something like that. And so the point is, again, your staff will want to, if you want to do local government ordinances regarding vacation rentals, this gives you more specifics on how you can, if it is signed. This bill has not also been sent. The governor, I can tell you this one is one of those that remains controversial. And so wait until see what the governor does. But I don't think vacation rentals has been a huge issue for your county in the past. So it's just maybe making note of this thing that's never happened for a long, long time finally did happen. And so we'll see what changes from there. Of note of bills that did not pass, bills that failed to move, but I wanted to put on your radar because I have a feeling they will be back. One is HB 609, local business taxes. This was a bill that got some traction in the House. This preempted a local government's ability to levy a local business tax or local business receipt. Many local governments have a different title for them. Many see it possibly were opposed to the bill. One, from the loss of revenue side of it, but also many local governments I heard testify or heard discussion of the bill. It also removed your ability to have a registration system to know what businesses were operating in your community. I heard many say we charge a very nominal fee, but it's always nice to have somebody come in and say we're registering and documenting exactly what kind of business we're operating in these locations. So if you were to say, hey, how many barbershops do we have in town, you would have a way to know that kind of thing. And so that bill did not pass, but again, I have a feeling it will be back. And so it's important to note, maybe start thinking about how you could modify your ordinances to accommodate that.
So, and I know you said you named it a couple different things here. We call it an occupational license fee. Is that what it is?
Again, that would be a great example. Look at the bill to see how it was defined, compare it to what your ordinance says, and then maybe start thinking of how we could make sure we don't fit our square peg into that square hole. Make sense?
By your description, that's what it sounds like.
Yes. I can tell you the intent was to cover all types of topics of this category. Again, and you guys are not new to this process. You know the tone of Tallahassee is we're a less regulation, less tax, and if we can find a way to reel in a local government's ability. And as usual, it's also one of those great examples I think of. In most cases, it's not a factor, and then you'll find a local government somewhere that's charging an exorbitant amount, and the legislature thinks there's a need for them to step in and regulate that back. Another bill that I think, again, will get some traction eventually, SB 472, sovereign immunity. This raises or changes the caps on your sovereign immunity liability in terms of civil claims. Right now, it's capped at, I believe, at 200, 300, depending on the scope of the claim. This bill has been around now for at least 2 or 3 sessions. I've seen it in various versions that were up to $1 million. I've seen in some cases unlimited. I've seen in other cases where it ties it to the consumer price index and continues to move with the cost of living. It died again this year, but it moved in both chambers. I think it's only a matter of time before they finally agree on what that price will be. And so I think it's important to take note of that in your own budget planning processes or your own insurance and risk management policies, to just know that that number will probably be changing. And also of note, it hasn't changed now in probably over a decade, so it's probably just wise to also consider it from your standpoint as well. Lastly is SB 438, HB 57, term limits. This was a bill that would have passed mandatory term limits for counties. It moved in both chambers well. In the end, they just could not stick the landing on exactly what the term limit cap should be. It varied across the board, from 12 years to 8 years to non-charter counties to people that had already passed 12 years, that people that didn't have any in place. Again, I think that bill will come back in some version or another, and it's only a matter of time, I think, before they eventually settle on what the number should be and who it should be imposed to. If you want on that one, and this is a great example, that is one you want to read the report, because we try to do our best to give you literally like an autopsy on it of all the different ways it changed, where it finally got stuck, what the final versions were, and really even in the bill, you would think an issue of this could be this simple of just term limits, but it's very complicated in terms of non-charter counties and charter counties and who had a referendum on it, who hasn't had a referendum on it, and things like that. And so that's a great example of look into it to see exactly where it ended. Moving on from legislation, and then I'll answer any questions just to give you some important dates. As I said, the legislature is now wrapped up. I don't anticipate anything of note really going on in Tallahassee. If there is a special session, I don't think it'll be on a topic very specific to local governments. Just a friendly reminder, when they call a special session, they have to also give the cause. They have to give the reason, the scope of the special session. So it's not just hey, this is a great time, we can file a bill and try to move this during a special. It's very narrow as to what they could be considered then. So if there is a special session, I don't think it'll be on a topic that's going to impact the local government operations. Dates, of course, to put on your calendar: November 5th, the general election. The primary is August 20th. All members of the Florida House are on the ballot. All members of the Florida House are up for re-election. Only half of the Florida Senate is up, all odd-numbered Senate seats, which include Senate District 31, which is the one that represents Martin County. Senator Garrell Harrell is on the ballot. So that is where most of the focus will be between now and the end of the year. After the election in November 5th, it's important to note that this is the start of a whole new legislative cycle. We will have a new Senate president. We'll have a new Speaker of the House. We'll have all new committee chairs, all new committee assignments. Everything very much starts over from scratch going into the next session. There will be an organizational session at the end of November, and then they'll announce committee weeks. Normally there's a committee week in 1 or 2 in December, 1 or 2 in January, usually 2 to 3 in February. The next session starts March 4th, 2025. So this is the long gap. This is the big gap. So it'll start in March. So between now and then, we have a long time between March and May of when it will conclude. And then to really forecast out, though, the 2026 session is early. So we'll wrap up in May of 2025 and go back in January of 2026. So I always actually consider it one session, 2 halves. And so we just got done with one session. It's over. We will start the first half of the next session after the November elections. So we have plenty of time to continue to discuss any legislative issues that the county may have, your appropriation goals, your legislative needs. I would say we have all throughout the summer and into the fall. We'll want to start nailing those down and deciding what we need to push probably by September, October, so that we're ready to hit the ground running right after the election in November. But I also can tell you, rules can change. For example, just the appropriation process that we've gotten very used to in terms of a member filing a form in each side, that's only about 6, 7 years old. Speaker Corcoran brought that in. They could very much change that, and they could change the deadlines. They can make it harder to apply for a project. They can make it easier to apply for projects. And so I think it's great. I don't anticipate more changes coming down the way, but just know we're going into a new legislative cycle, new leadership, new chairs, and all the rules can change. And with that, I'll pause and answer any questions.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for everything else. 2 questions. I had the occasion about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, to meet with the incoming Senate President for a few minutes and chatted with him about what I've always called all things water and getting a water policy done that is a statewide funding and planning program for 5, 10, and 20-year horizons. He was instantly surprised but grateful that he said, I am going to be one of your champions on that. So I share that with you if you've not already had that conversation with him. But he was very excited about the idea. The Association of Counties and others are talking about it and wanting to do something with it this session. So hopefully that is something that is going to be on our radar screen. The other, Ron Book, who serves as our director for our Regional Planning Councils, a statewide association. We had a joint Regional Planning Council meeting with South Florida Regional Planning Council probably about a month and a half ago, and we had about a 3-hour conversation about homeowners insurance. And it was really interesting. I mean, we had some really good speakers, really good experts in the field. And there are seemingly some federal fixes if there's an appetite to fix it, but there's also some state stuff more that we can do. I didn't know if you had any kind of inclination as to anything you're hearing early already about, is there going to be something more robust done at the state level relative to this coming session, and should we be doing anything in the process between now and then with either our community, the industry, FAC, whatever?
So let me start with water. I've heard numerous people address there should be a better process for this. The number of water projects and water-related issues that come up every year now are vast. I do think, again, I think it's one of those great examples of there's going to be a market correction. As a guy that's done this for a long time, there used to not be a ton of water projects, and now there are. I think we might actually see a lot of that, I think possibly in the veto letter that comes maybe any hour, later this week maybe or next. What is being said is there are now numerous programs through DEP, existing grant programs regarding resiliency, regarding septic, sewer, beach, other areas that are important to local governments, and everyone should be going through that process. And so I do think there could be that could be. So I guess I point out there hopefully will be less. There will be the equal amount of money for projects, if not maybe more, but a different line for all of us to get in to push for them.
And I guess what we've talked about, and Frank Bernardino and I have been working on this for years. Did Frank retire?
I think Frank has retired numerous times, and I've seen him in the hallways after retirement numerous times. And so I don't want to say whether he is or is not, but yes.
Anyway, the one thing that's lacking, and this is what we've been talking about for probably 5 or 6 years with anybody who will listen, the predictability and the planning horizon is always what the challenge is. Right now, we have had a very favorable House, Senate, and Governor relative to all things water. But that can change, and the focus can change. And even though there's tremendous amounts of money pouring into the agency, which is where we'd like to have that happen, the certainty and the planning ability from the industry that builds this stuff, like what we have modeled it after with FDOT, isn't there. And that's kind of the challenge. It's like, how can we know that there are billions of dollars worth of work to do, but the question is, can the industry plan and count on that and ramp up to a level to which, and we just had Drew here this morning talking about how much is getting done, and in the next 10 years, it's very possible that we may be like completely ahead of the curve. But that can all change if there's not this sort of infrastructure built in place that every 5 years we're redoing our work plan to make sure that the work plan matches the funding and the funding keeps growing with it like FDOT's does. And I remind everybody of this, when I started doing this, FDOT's budget, I think, was somewhere in the $3 billion range. It's now like $17 billion. Water has to have that same level of commitment. If
Yeah, like a 5-year work plan type project, yeah.
So
You're not alone, and so yeah, I think that we could see some direction or change on that. In regards to insurance, that is one of the buzzworthy topics of a special session. Is something to address homeowners insurance. The other buzzworthy topic is immigration of some sort. We've seen other states pass legislation relating to how they handle immigration issues, and so those are the two kind of rumored ones. What they would do, though, on either topic remains to be seen, which is probably why they haven't called a special yet. It's up in the air. I do not think there is consensus. Again, I'm not an insurance lobbyist, but I have not seen consensus on, one, what exactly is the cause of the problem, and then two, what exactly would be the best solution for it. And I think until you get either one of those, we're there. And then the last thing I'll say, though I say this on numerous topics, it's also Florida. We are 1 hour away from whatever next catastrophe will happen, whether it's a hurricane, a oil spill, sadly a shooting, sadly mosquitoes, some new pandemic, yeah, a fire. Yeah, it's at any given moment in Florida where there will be a reason to pivot because of an emergency, and that will obviously impact the homeowners insurance policy for sure.
pretty sure we taped that meeting. You might want to watch that section. It was fascinating. The experts that they had, a congressman was there, former FEMA director. At least in the conversation, there are some more heavily handed federal fixes that would have to happen with the reinsurance piece of all of this, which is where a lot of it stems from. But still, there's some progress, and it just, anyway, we can talk about it later. I'm just curious about what you thought about it. And
Yeah, I do think it remains open. I think it'll definitely be an issue, and unless all of our policies go down in the next 9 months, they probably won't. They'll probably be going up, in which case they'll continue to be some sort of legislative issue dealing with it.
thank you. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
Any other questions, comments?
I was-
Nope. Commissioner Heatherington?
I was going to say, I've not read an autopsy before, but this is absolutely, really very informative, your end of session report, so I appreciated it very much. Thanks for being here, too.
My pleasure. But I would also like to stress, I hate writing all, because a lot of it is so nuanced. So always feel free to give me a call. We try to write it in a way that is informative without just copy and pasting staff analysis. At the same time, there's a fine line between getting it legally correct, the actual words on the paper, and the nuance of exactly where it is. So always feel free to give us a buzz and we can walk through it.
Commissioner Hurt?
Yeah, Commissioner Smith, I heard really, really good things about that insurance roundtable also. Do you think that there's any way that we could get some of the experts who attended that, participated in that, to present to us so that we can have a better idea for what we need to lobby for in the next session?
Yes, yes, and yes. What I said to Tom Lanahan following that joint meeting was that if for nothing else, the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council should host its own thing. That whether we get the same people, we don't. Moskowitz, Congressman Moskowitz, that's who I was thinking about. It was incredibly informative.
So I heard.
And I'm sure I'm sure there's lots of things wrong with the conversation, but if you're just sitting there absorbing and listening to what they were talking about, it all made perfectly good sense. It's just getting the feds to move off of where they are at a global scale, which may be impossible, and it's not just us. I mean, we Florida fund like 70% of the FEMA side of the world. We only use 30% of it, and that's troubling in a lot of ways as well. But this whole National Catastrophic Fund conversation, that's a piece of it, like should there be, shouldn't there be, as Matt just laid out for Florida. I mean, there are tornadoes, there are massive fires out west. There are all sorts of things that feed into this. But at the end of the day, what I took away was that the reinsurance side of this was the biggest piece of it. But anyway, yes, sir. I asked Tom, there were 2 or 3 priorities. One is water policy. We will have a summit at the Regional Planning Council on that. We'll have one on insurance. And then we're talking about putting one together for our wildlife corridor issue that we have on the East Coast, or lack thereof.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. I know that when I first came into office, I was leery about lobbying. If you're outside of the government, you don't really get the value necessarily. But having Ballard Partners and being up there and seeing your work for us in Tallahassee, and like Commissioner Smith said this morning about Fowler West in D.C., we would just be roaming around in Tallahassee or D.C. as a small county on our own, really not accomplishing much. So I appreciate that you're there, and then even to come and recap and then put something like this together, because, what happens up there is directly affecting us here. And if we don't understand how it works, we can't tell our constituents. So thank you very much. And for switching your schedule today.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. All right. With that, our next meeting is a joint meeting with City of Stewart, School Board, Village of Indiantown, and on June 13th at 9 a.m. on the Blake Library. And yes, I did forget the commissioner comment.
No, but also he's,
Commissioner Smith?
Me?
Yep.
You touched on something that I think we probably ought to have on the agenda for the joint meeting. The City of Stewart relies, I wouldn't say heavily, but a lot on their occupational license fees for a couple different issues. One for revenue, but also they do a lot of their calculating of parking and capacity through who's working, how many employees there are, blah, blah, blah. I don't know, I wasn't necessarily aware what they had done with it this year, or how it all ended up, but that's something that we should probably highlight to them, or they should know and be cognizant of, because it will impact them.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm still recognized or not, but yeah, I would recommend read the bill. And again, it was a bill that didn't get a lot of traction, didn't a lot of movement. But again, I've done this for a long time, and I know the member that filed it is not going anywhere. And as they continue to matriculate, it will continue to grow and go. And so I think it's important to look at the bill now to say, if it would have passed, how would it have impacted us, and how can we maybe diversify our maybe revenue collections, registration processes, whatever it may be, to minimize if this was to happen in the future.
Hear you. It's just a thing for our staff as much as anything, just to kind of, okay, we should have a conversation with them about that.
Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah, I would like to move for reconsideration of the vote on today's Department 3, which is approval of the Fifth Amendment and complete restatement of agreement of lease with Witham Aero Club.
second.
Want to vote on that?
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Hurd, seconded by Commissioner Campy. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Now, the reason that I'm requesting a reconsideration is that my husband is a member of Witham Aero Club and owns an individual hangar at Witham Aero Club. So I'm going to abstain from voting on this because it may present a conflict of interest, and I will file a Form 8B with the clerk.
Chairman, I would move approval of the Witham Aero Club agenda item.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
I abstain.
Okay, motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Hurd abstaining.
4-0.
4-0 with Commissioner Hurd abstaining. Eventually I'll get that right.
You got time.
Any other commissioner comments, Commissioner Campy?
No, sir.
I don't have any, do you?
All set?
Okay, then, public comment. Damn, thank God you're here. Do we have any public comment? Nope. Seeing none. Our next regular meeting, and by the way, I'm probably going to miss the July our June 13th joint meeting.
All right.
No, I
Forbidden.
actually have
That's
a
right.
very good reason to. And our next regular scheduled meeting, commission meeting, is on June 18th.
Do we, before you do that,
Okay?
is there anything, is June 13th packed with stuff, not packed with stuff?
It's the joint meeting.
Joint meeting, yeah.
So not packed.
Yes.
Okay. I,
It's okay. I'm sure you'd rather be at the joint meeting, right?
oh, yeah, yes, actually, in this particular instance, yes. Okay, and with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.